Welcome, Dr. Herman, to The Root of Our Health. It's such a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yes. So, I would love to find out a little bit more about you before we do a deep dive into what you do. Who are you? And if you could share with my audience, like your background and how you became, doing what you're doing today.
Yeah, I'll tell you, many years ago, when I was brought up, I didn't really have insight into what to become when I got out of high school or got out of college. But it was about when I was maybe 15 years old. My mother had a sit down with me, and she said, "You're going to pick something. You're going to go somewhere in life. Doctor, dentist, lawyer, pick one." And that was it. And I just went, well, I didn't know. And my older brother at the time, we were very close growing up and into bodybuilding and working out and wrestling and things. And he hurt his back, and a chiropractor helped him be able to function well. And the chiropractor, we called him a doctor, and the guy was on vacation a lot and worked. It seemed like an easy type of professional, I guess, job or position to have in life. And so that's what he and I, my brother and I, chose to do. But coming out of chiropractic school, I realized pretty quickly that it wasn't what it was portrayed to be in the school that I went to. The philosophy was in the school that I went to, the philosophy was that people just needed chiropractic care and everything was going to be, great, and you can get their health back from this terrible disease. And I realized very rapidly that it just wasn't the case. And people with chronic migraines or with different pains in their body or with asthma or with high blood pressure, and the list goes on, that they were not just really getting relief from that work. So I decided to go back to school. I decided to go back to school in neurology and in neurochemistry and in immunology. And I can go on a long list of courses, endocrinology and brain development courses and so much. And I'll tell you that the one thing that keeps me going is I really love being the person, being the physician who helps crack the code and help that person or those people get their life back. There's like no greater joy. There's no greater. It's so fulfilling to see somebody who's had a lifetime of asthma where the asthma disappears, or a lifetime of migraine headaches where the migraines just disappear back. And again, the list of various symptoms that we're treating goes on. It's a very long list, and yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm right there with you when you see the transformation from, people that you are helping. And it's just a wonderful feeling. And it's not just, to boost yourself. It's just more or less like there is a way. And, it's just rewarding. Thank you for going into your background. So my question is, why do you think we have so much chronic pain and chronic illness in this world right now?
Well, in immunology, the immunologist had taught us and showed us through dozens and dozens and dozens of research papers from scientists around the world who were not paid by drug companies to do their reports on what they found in their experiments. And the conclusion was and is that every pain disorder, every chronic disease period is brought on by various infections and toxins that exist in the body. So a person can feel just fine their whole life growing up, and all of a sudden they pick up, for example, the flu virus or Epstein-Barr virus. And now the virus, whichever one or multiple viruses, plural, can get deeply embedded into the person's lymph system, nervous system, bone marrow, thyroid gland, for example, and it leads to various symptoms, various pain disorders. So when people are going for some people will get relief from chiropractic. Some people will get relief from their pain from that is outside of a traumatic brain injury or a traumatic, somebody's brain strain injury. Of course, I mean there are different things that happen in life, but it's these infections and chemicals that get deeply embedded in parts of the nervous system and other parts of the body that lead to these different symptoms that people are suffering. So when somebody goes for a massage or goes for acupuncture, again, some people get relief from these things. There's different services around. But what I've realized is that the there are people who don't get relief from various different methods of care. And that's where I fit in, is to be able to help the person literally find those different deeply embedded infections and toxins, and it's infections, whether it's viruses and or bacteria and or mold, fungal and parasitic infections that get in the body through different parts of our environment, and various toxins. And I can go on a list of how that goes on, but or gets in the body, or the different types of toxins that get in the body that people are commonly not looking for as well. Physicians are commonly not looking for as well, I'll put it that way. Is that when these things exist in the body can't function normally. And I'll tell you something else. What I found in my studies was that there was a study that was done by what's called an environmental working group, or it can be looked online as EWG, right? So in 2005, studies of babies, they found that there were 287 cancer-causing toxins in these babies just born in any part of the USA, any part of any city, any state, any hospital, any newborn infant they found had these poisons in them. So when the body's already burdened at birth, and now there's more added through vaccines and through, and the list goes on, pesticides and other things that get in the body, it becomes too much for the body to handle. And that's the core of it all.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, ewg.org. I look at it from, time to time just to see certain, if you look at, products or whatnot, certain ingredients on there obviously are toxic to either the skin, or if you're ingesting. And one of them, my thinking is, and you tell me if I'm correct, but I'm thinking that these babies, not only, there's so much out there, like you said, but I'm thinking the water has a lot to do with ingesting toxins. And that's the first thing that they're getting. Like, we're thinking that we're drinking, when we're saying, drink more water, what we're essentially saying is don't drink any tap water, drink filtered water.
Well, yes, but I can add on to that.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, because I test patients, the people who come to me with these chronic ailments, I have them bring me a sample of their water from their home or their business. And even certain filtration systems are not getting all the toxins out of the water that people are drinking. So yes, better than tap water, 100%, to have something, have some type of filtration device. But most filtration devices outside of a distiller, which we have to put minerals back into distilled water. This is a very important topic. I'm glad you brought it up, because water is huge. But water, through certain filtration systems, maybe they get chlorine out of the water, they get fluoride out of the water, or maybe another heavy metal gets out of the water with these different machines. But with these different filtration systems, what about mold toxins that are in the water? What about a virus that's in the water? And there are. And what about if there's a microscopic bacteria that's in the water, but the city's not telling the people to boil the water first because there was a hurricane or a tornado or a flood or something like that? So water can have radon in it. Water can have so many different things that these different filtration systems don't get out. And what I found with my work, and this is a great topic that you brought up, is that the water, we get hydrated. We need water to survive. Obviously, we're about, let's say, 85% water. So what happens when somebody let's say somebody's 50 years old and they've been drinking, first they started out with tap water, or maybe they were a kid playing on the side of their house. They drank out of the hose like some kids do. At least when I grew up, I never understood that as a kid, but kids did that. They were just drinking out of the hose. And because I was brought up in a house where my parents were big into the water filter systems it was back in the early 80s. So I just kind of had a different mindset out there. But when the body's been getting hydrated with all these different toxins that were in the water, whether it's arsenic, chlorine, fluoride, mercury, radon, and there's mold toxins in the water from molds that could be in the water line. So what happens when the person's been drinking that type of water in the school out of a water fountain in their elementary school, they're drinking out of who knows what's in the water line and where the water came from. And the FDA doesn't really look at, they say that there's a certain allowable so many parts per million of certain toxins in the water. Why is that allowable? Who says that that's okay for the human body? So when the water goes to the brain and gets deeply embedded in the brain to hydrate the brain, and it goes to the spinal cord and it gets deeply embedded in the spinal cord, it goes to the lymphatic system to hydrate the lymphatic, it goes to the bones, it goes to the spinal fluid, the meninges, the skin, the organs. And when the body's system, so back to that study from EWG, the body burden study in 2005, when the babies were already born, because they found in the babies 287 toxic cancer-causing chemicals through biopsy tissue analysis of brain, and they weren't even vaccinated yet, and they seemed to be healthy at birth. So now and they found the same in the mother's umbilical cord blood. So we're not blaming the mother, she's innocent, right? And there is no life on the planet without the mother. So let me say, we're grateful for women. But let me just say that if the woman had come from her mother, who had eaten food with DDT that was in it from these idiots on this planet who do this to us, right? So what happens when the DDT went from the mother to the next mother and from that mother to the new infant in 2005, right? So plastics, I mean, there's a very long list of chemicals, but now we understand that when the baby is so let's just say that the mother was drinking water and she was breastfeeding her child. It's supposed to be better to get breastfed. What happens when the mother was consuming through the first 20 years of her life water that was from tap, right? And it had mercury, it had radon, it had lead, it had arsenic, it had chlorine, it had fluoride, maybe mold toxins, viruses, and the body had to use that water to hydrate the breast tissue. So now the mammary glands are loaded with, because the body has to deposit it somewhere. So back to the babies, when the baby's already burdened and now growing up to be a 20-year-old woman who's going to have a baby, and the woman's already toxic at birth and her kidneys, her lymph, her liver, her colon, her sweat glands couldn't even excrete all of that 287 or 100 or 150, whatever the woman had in her. And now there was vaccines and there were dental anesthesia chemicals pumped in from cavities or pulling teeth. And there was a surge or whatever happened. And now it's just too much. And now it's implanted with the water that she drank that was toxic into the breast tissue. And now she's producing breast milk that's carrying all these different toxins. So the baby's drinking toxic breast milk. I'm not knocking breast milk. I'm just saying what I have found with children where parents bring their kids to my clinic, whether it's for autism or they have eczema or they have asthma. And I'm talking young children. We're talking like 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, where they're being breastfed. And I get to test because I have the mother bring in the breast milk, a sample of that. And I test and I find candida in the breast milk. I find viral infections in the breast milk. I find there's lead. I find that there's different things in there. Yeah, water is big, and getting what I'm able to do with my work now. So I just want to bring up this point is that, so let's just say at 20 years old, somebody stopped the tap water and they got the best filtrate. They went distilled water to kill any germ and remove any poison from the water. And they put the right minerals back in. And now they're drinking perfect water from, let's say, 20 years to 30 years old. They're drinking perfect water. Was the body able to, on its own, even with a sauna, even with doing an enema, even with doing castor oil packs, even with doing lymphatic drainage massages, even with doing different detox supplements and better diets, was the body able to get rid of those different toxins that the body deposited into various tissues from the water that they were drinking? And what we're able to do with our work is actually find where that toxic water went into the body and actually provide a very effective and safe strategy that will make the body safely, without stress, squeeze, if we can just say, extract and expel that toxic waste out of the body from the drinking water that they had. But even some of the bottled waters, we've tested bottled waters from many different companies, whether it's just, there's arsenic in some of these waters, there's a lot of things. So yeah, it's a very important topic. Very important.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like, we it's everywhere, and it's just more or less like, so then I guess the question is, how do we get to drinking the best water? Like you were just giving an example of, the 20 to 30-year-old, that 10 years drank the best water. What, in your opinion, is the best resource or the best tool, water filtration system?
I love, me personally, and again, I've tested patients' waters who come to me from across this country and from other parts of the world who come to my clinic in Florida. And I've had people bring their drinking water from their home where they've had different filter devices on. So in my opinion, right now, I have a distiller in my home, the water distiller machine, and we add minerals back in. So the water distiller cleans out any impurities, any infection, any virus, any mold, any bacteria, any parasite, any fungus, and any kind of chemical. It all comes out, but it also takes out minerals. So we put minerals back into the water before we're going to drink it. And we wash and we soak our foods before we're going to cook with that distilled water. Now, with that said, there's only been one, I think out of all the patients, only one who had a reverse osmosis system where I tested that water, where that was not hurting the person. It was clean. It was clean. But another person, and I don't know why the difference, but another person had the reverse osmosis, which is supposed to be one of the best filtration devices that's out there. The reverse osmosis, he also had a UV light that was coming from the well. It was on two sides of the reverse osmosis device, from the well and then right before it was coming out to drink. And supposedly the UV light is supposed to kill different germs. But when I tested, and these come from two different patients who had the same type of system set up, they had mold toxins in the water. They had ochre toxin that was in the water, which is hurting them. So my personal and professional belief is that the distiller is the best, but we have to add minerals back in.
Okay, great. Thank you. So now, obviously, that's the prevention side, right? The prevention side is to use the distilled water, excuse me. But can you walk us through what rapid health restoration system is and basically how it works? Because that's kind of like when we're at that point, right, where we need help. So, can you just go into detail about that?
Yeah, sure. And thank you for the opportunity to share with everybody. I'll tell you this. On average, it takes me about 30 minutes to describe how I do what I do. I'll bring up a couple of points, but I did write a book that's free for people to download. That's on my website. And so that maybe it takes some 40 or 50 minutes to read. It's very easy reading. And then on the last page of that book, I have a video link that people can click on, and that link brings them to a video page on my website where I'm describing my journey as a physician and the types of labs I used to run on patients. And that's 20 minutes of that video. In the next 20 minutes, I get into kind of a basic how I do what I do. So again, it takes a long time to describe all this. It's not a simple one statement answer. So with that said, the rapid health restoration system that I created. Now, there's a lot of research that was based on biophysics research, where biophysicists, and I don't know how deep I can get into this. You tell me, you cut me off if it's going too deep here. But the biophysicists discovered that every single organism has its own frequency. Every single toxin has its own individual frequency. Every single body part in the human body has its own frequency. So if you think of frequencies like on an FM radio station, radio dial, where 103.5 or 93.9, right? There's different frequencies that we as humans can't hear without the radio. So it's all around us all the time, the radio is, but we don't pick it up without the device called a radio. So it's just like a human can't see at night without, unless it's a full moon, of course, but unless they have like night vision goggles. Some human group of people figured out how to see at night with these goggles. When we put it on, we could see at night as almost as if it's daytime. In a dark room, you could see people walking around. I've never had them on, but I've seen it in movies. So the different frequencies, the point is that we have equipment, not a computer. We have equipment that allows us, and samples of all these different viruses, different bacteria, different parasites, different molds and fungi, and viruses, parasites, mold, fungi, and bacteria, right? So we have all these different individual strains of these organisms. So I'll bring up a point. If you think of two different radio stations like 103.5 to 105.1, different frequencies, different DJ, different commercials, different music. The influenza virus, for example, is a virus under the family of viruses, but Epstein-Barr virus is another virus, but it's called different. It's got a different frequency. It's its own radio station, if you will. All right. So is herpes. And herpes, there's more than one herpes. And there's other viruses out there, COVID. Okay. So same with bacteria. We have strep, we have gonorrhea, we have syphilis, we have staph, and there's many others. Just like heavy metals, there's arsenic, or there's lead, there's aluminum and chlorine and fluoride. So what these biophysicists discovered is that every single individual infection as well as toxin has its own frequency. We have samples of these in the clinic. And the body parts, the thyroid, for example, in a female body, the thyroid is a gland that helps produce hormones. The adrenal gland does the same hormone production, but different hormones. And it's located in a different part of the body with a different name. scientists, these biophysicists, discovered that the thyroid has its own individual frequency, the adrenal has its own individual frequency. Okay, so we have samples in these vials of these different parts of the body of, let's say, whether it's the prostate in a man, or the testicle, or the liver, or the gallbladder. They're all labeled for what body part they are. So when we're doing this work with people, we're able to find that the person has a stress reaction that can be, let's say, for example, they take a deep breath, and I find the body is stressed through a muscle test, through kinesiology. Let me pause a moment. I said before that there's a video I created that's attached to my ebook.
Yeah.
I did after chiropractic, and I went back to school for neurology and neurochemistry and immunology and endocrinology and GI disorders and thyroid disease and many more. I got into the functional medicine, and I ran labs on every single patient. $2,000+ of laboratories was the initial workup, besides a very thorough hour to an hour and a half long neurological evaluation of a person from head to toe. With people with pain disorders, whether it was rheumatoid arthritis or lupus or MS or heart disease or migraines or whatever the symptom was, a lot of the labs came back with nothing wrong. No, I'm not saying hair analysis or urine for heavy metals. It did show that there was some arsenic or lead, but some of the stool tests came back. There were no bugs. Maybe just they needed some what do you call it, probiotics. But some of the stomach tests came back. There was no infection in the stomach, but people had stomach pain. There was just too much. People had gluten problems. People went off gluten and they didn't feel any better. Supposedly they were promising me, swearing up and down that they went off gluten, but they didn't get better, or dairy and other foods. So I always wondered what is missing here. And there was a in the immunology course I took, the immunologist, who's very well known in the industry, he's over 40 years in the industry, and he has patents on different antibodies he discovered in the lab for different parts of the body. He pointed out, there was a diagram he showed us, or a picture he showed us on the screen of a person with the thyroid, with their mercury filling from the tooth dripping down from the neck, right from the mouth through the neck to the thyroid gland. So after the course, and I saw all these different research papers that there was mercury in the brain, or there were parasites in the joints and the tissue of a rheumatoid arthritic patient, or there was viruses in the lungs of an asthma patient. I called him up and I thanked him so much for opening my eyes and opening my mind and being able to help me really see the light of why these different diseases were occurring in the human body. But I asked him this question: the person you showed, or a diagram or a drawing that was shown with the person with the thyroid, with the mercury filling from the tooth dripping down to the thyroid gland, I've learned to run a hair analysis for heavy metals. I've learned to run a urine analysis for heavy metals, but the lab is not going to tell me if there's dental mercury in the thyroid gland. How do I find that? I'm not going to run a biopsy on the human tissue of the thyroid and wait a few weeks to get the biopsy back. And he said to me, Dr. Herman, very good thinking. Now you know the truth. Now go on your journey and try to figure it out. He goes, no, you're not going to find, right? I was like, oh, it was like, I was so happy to speak to him and so like invigorated with all this knowledge. And I went, after the phone call, I was like, oh my God, how do I keep doing what I'm doing for people when I can't find? I'm not going to do a biopsy of the thyroid gland and find if there's a virus on there causing the Hashimoto's thyroid. I'm not going to run a biopsy and see that there's heavy metals or a dental anesthesia chemical went from the tooth down to the thyroid. How am I going to find it? And he said, I don't know how to tell you. Keep running your labs that you're doing, but you're not going to find that mercury in the thyroid in any of the laboratories you're learning to run in the functional medicine courses that the school is teaching. And I went, great. Now what do I do? So fast forward, I found this work about biophysics, and coming back to where I was saying before, I had to, because one of the other courses I started taking was about alternative. I'm going to come back to the biophysics in a moment. I'm trying not to talk around too much, but there's so much that I've gone through 12 years in school, where a woman who was very close to me, she got ovarian cancer. And I was very big into neurology and functional medicine. And unfortunately, she died very quickly at the hands of medicine. All the surgeries and the chemo and the radiation, she just, let's just say it wasn't good. Okay. And I didn't know what to do. I had no idea what to offer her. And it crushed me to know that for me, I don't want to just comfort someone and say, it was nice knowing you. I want to be able to get in there and start doing something to help fix the problem, help the person restore the health and get rid of the disease. That's who I am. So fast forward, when I realized that there was things missing in the labs that I was running, there was things missing in the neurological evaluation. When I took that alternative cancer treatment program, that's what I was about to get to before, I learned there that there could be dental infections. Part of my rapid health restoration system is understanding how the teeth can be connected to the body disorder, whether it's arthritis or a headache or a thyroid problem or lupus or MS or a bladder disease or heart disease or cancer. So I learned a lot about the teeth. I started working very closely with dentists. I learned a way to evaluate the teeth and see if the tooth is actually infected and or toxic, and if it's connected to a diseased organ in the body that they're in question of. You know, if they have stomach problems or intestinal problems or asthma or thyroid or whatever it is, or if it's MS or lupus. I realized, though, in the alternative cancer program that I took, that muscle testing, which I thought was a joke and kind of weird years ago, I was very into scientific, of what I thought was only scientific way of running labs. And somebody did a muscle test on me and I was in shock. I was like, how the hell did that happen? How did my arm go weak? What did he just do? He didn't do anything different. Like, why was that? I held one bottle of a supplement. I was strong. I held another one and my arm went down. What is that? I don't understand. But I started getting into that and I took courses on that, how to do muscle testing. And the reality is kinesiology is used by medical doctors, but they don't realize it. When they do a pupil reflex with a person, they shine the light in the eye and we see the muscle contraction. That's a nerve muscle response. So back to this, I found through this research, biophysics, that all the different frequencies, I can get samples of these parts of the body. And I learned how to apply different types of, without getting too deep into it, I just don't know how long I can go for you because I could talk for hours about this. But I learned how to find through a stress reaction that I'm with the body, with the human body, that the thyroid is the stress tissue and the dental mercury is in the thyroid. I'm able to find that with this method. And then we can provide a safe and effective remedy, because what these biophysicists also discovered is that we can take the sample of the chemical like mercury or the influenza virus or the Epstein-Barr virus or the strep bacteria that made a strep throat happen. We can take that, and we have machines that will do this. We can transfer the frequency, the energy of that chemical or of that infection into water. So let's say the water had a zero frequency, clean distilled water, zero frequency in it, zero EMF, zero frequency in it. And let's say a strep bacteria had 103.5 frequency. Let's just hypothetically say it's got 103.5. When we put the strep in one side of the equipment and the water on the other side, we turn the machine on, and the current, just like a jumper cable sends energy from a good battery to a dead battery, we can start up the car. We know it worked because we can drive the car away with it, right? That was once dead. These machines will take the frequency, the 103.5, hypothetically, I don't know the frequency, it doesn't matter, but 103.5 strep, and send it over through the wires into the water. So when we take out the water, it's 103.5 now. It's identical to the strep sample. When we take one drop of that water that has the 103.5 strep in it, not strep in it, but the frequency of the strep in it, and the frequency of that strep, when they put that water in their mouth, one drop of it, the water meets the strep that's in their strep throat, and it just obliterates it, like Bohr's light principle. So we can actually make hybrid, we'll call them quantum energized formulas. Some people may call it a remedy. We can make a hybrid of this with the same way of the thyroid's perfect optimal, perfect energy and the dental mercury. We can put both of those frequencies into the water. When the person takes the remedy, it's going to go right to the thyroid and get rid of the mercury, the dental mercury from the thyroid. So with the rapid health restoration system, once I realized that, this was probably about 10 years ago, I was introduced to this, and it was mind-blowing for me. I just realized that I had because as I started working with patients, and there was a scientist who said something to me. He gave me this conversation because I was pretty frustrated in the beginning when I started using these samples and trying to figure it out. And he said, Dr. Herman, you're going to get good enough that you're going to help to, and I don't like to use this word, he told me you're going to cure a disease in one visit. And I was like, what? No way. I've got to run these labs on people. It's going to take months. It might even take a year. How is that even possible? And then when I kept that in the back of my mind, I just started applying different principles, different methods, strategies that I learned through my neurology studies, that I learned through my GI disorder studies, that I learned through respiratory analysis studies and balance disorder studies, and about developmental disorders of the brain, and even in that alternative cancer course, when I learned different methods and I started applying, and even about the dental analysis, and I started applying, and even I'll tell you, when I took neurochemistry and I took psychiatry and psychology in pre-graduate. So I started applying all these different things, and it created, and eventually we created this whole rapid health restoration system where I'm able to find from different stresses in the environment. I'm able to find if the person is stressed by that particular stressor, like let's say chocolate, for example. Maybe the body is, I'll tell you, when I was a kid, because I love chocolate, but when I was a kid, I broke out in hives. I couldn't eat chocolate as a little boy. Hives, and my throat would close, and I'd have to get injections. So I love chocolate.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
Well, it was a rough upbringing, but I'll tell you, man, I was out of it, but that was bad. I had to get needles. Anyway. So in any event, but I realized because in these functional medicine food analysis laboratories, because years ago, I was along the lines of, you know what, everybody's got to stay off gluten, everybody's got to stay off dairy for the rest of your life. Don't ever touch it again. But some people still didn't get better when they were doing that diet. Some people did, but if they ate that food again, they relapsed. So I realized that when I can take that food that hurts them and apply it in a way during the examination of the person, apply it in a way to their body, and find that the body shows me a stress reaction, just like light shining in the pupil reflex occurs. Take away the light, the reflex disappears. So stress, cause the reflex, take away the stressor, the light, and the reflex disappears. When I found that food, through a certain way, we're able to apply it to the body and find that the person is stressed by that, and the person stays in the stress state until I find the exact organ and the infection in the organ. When they're holding onto this equipment, not a computer equipment, they're holding onto a metal device. Then when I put the exact sample of the organ down that's infected with the exact specific infection, I matched it up. The body has, let's say, the chocolate, but now I found, for example, the stomach had influenza virus and mold in it, and Epstein-Barr virus, and it had dental mercury in it, and it had dental anesthesia chemicals in it. And now when the person's holding the equipment with the diagnosis, so they go from a stress state with the chocolate to not a stress state, just like I took the light out of the eye. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
So I can find that the person, when we're going to now get rid of the mold and the influenza and the Epstein-Barr and the mercury and whatever from the stomach that we just diagnosed, when the person comes back into the clinic, they take the remedies to get rid of those disease-causing infections and chemicals out of that organ. When they come back to the clinic, they don't have a problem with chocolate anymore, or corn, or milk, or any of it. We get rid of the causes that were deeply embedded in the body so they can eat that food again, number one, and stop the symptom, whether it's high blood pressure or it's a congestive heart failure or it's an eczema or whatever the symptom is. So part of it is there's a food analysis that I'm able to find the disease-causing infections and or chemicals that are in the brain and the body that are making them stressed by the food. So we clean up their diet, but we clean up the body from the causes that made them stressed by those foods, so they can eat those foods again. I found, and one of my recent discoveries, and I will tell you, it's just one of the more brilliant things that I figured out is that there are different aromas that hurt people. Some people know, they're like, oh my God, if I smell bleach, I'd get sick, or if I just smell like an apple pie, it makes me nauseous because maybe there was an emotional trauma that happened as a kid. There's emotions, that's part of this. But I figured out that fragrances, even things that people, even cleaning chemicals, even perfumes, even essential oils can be hurting people. Even their own toothpaste can be hurting them. And so we found recently that these different aromas or fragrances, when I start using these in the test, we're finding that even if somebody stayed away from, let's say, using Windex and Clorox cleaning chemicals for the past, 10 years, they went organic and they went, everything is natural cleaning. But the chemical that they smelled 10 years ago, the Clorox or the Windex, is deeply embedded into their nervous system. And it triggered the growth of bugs like Lyme bugs or of different mold or something. It's still triggering it. So when we're able to use the fragrance analysis with patients and find these different bugs that are in the brain and the body, I'm telling you, we had a woman who was suffered for 3 years. She thought she was 1 in a million. 2 sick to get better. We're putting her testimonial video up, hopefully by the end of this week, and we'll have it up. She suffered terribly. She thought she was dying. 52 symptoms, 52 symptoms. She wrote a list. Her consultation, it took so long. I was like, I can't keep writing these symptoms. Could you please at least print a list, and then we'll talk about all those so I can ask you severity and frequency and other details about the symptoms. She came in with 2 papers, 52, 1 through 52 symptoms. And she's now in the first week of her recent protocol. When we figured out it was the fragrances that were bothering her, she's 75% better. But she thought she was dying, and she asked me, do you think you could ever help me? Because I don't think I'll ever get better. And that was after 9 ER visits, multiple labs, multiple imaging studies, and some intense, deep functional medicine and ozone treatments and a lot of things that she did, a lot of money she spent. And here she is now on the other side of this disease. We're very proud of it. So fragrance, dental analysis. I have people go to dentists. Sometimes we have to pull root canals, the mercury fillings, but there's a lot more that I get into about that. I have a specific page on my website about the dental work that we do with dentists and what we found in the mouth, covered by crowns. I mean, and sometimes people miss, because dentists can take an x-ray and still not find the infection that's in the jaw. So a CT scan, we may have to run on people, but so dental is part of the evaluation, the food analysis, and finding the infections that are stressing them so they don't have to stay away from the foods for the rest of their life and get their body better. When they can reintroduce those foods, they don't have the symptoms anymore. We find also through emotional analysis. I figured out through my studies in psychology, a little bit of psychiatry, but with this emotional analysis and neurochemistry, the emotional analysis, I figured out, because we're getting people with years of anxiety, they don't have it anymore without medication. Years of depression, they don't have the depression anymore without medication. And also, whether it's not an anxiety or depression, but they can have pain in the body. They can have a high blood pressure that happened from an emotional trauma that happened a decade or so ago. They can, a child, maybe a 50-year-old woman, unfortunately, there are some very bad people in this world, but I've met people who were adults now, but they were molested as children. And they're living with this whole emotional trauma embedded in their brain and their body. So I found that these emotions are connected to, or what happens is they trigger, and this was proven in studies in epigenetics. Mm-hmm. What the scientists proved is that the cell, when they removed the DNA from the cell and they removed the nucleus from the cell never died. It didn't change its performance. It didn't get diseased. But what they did find is that when they, like with Dr. Masaru Emoto, do you know him? The Japanese physician, spoke to water, and he was able to prove that the water changed its structure by love or hate or evil or tranquility. Look him up, Emoto, Dr. Emoto, very interesting work. But what these epigeneticists found is that the emotion can even trigger the cell to go into a diseased state. And they found that different infections were triggered that were, let's say we had a DNA, because part of our DNA is viral DNA, like a breast cancer gene, we have viral genes. So they found that there could be influenza virus as part of your DNA, or Epstein-Barr virus or herpes as part of your DNA. You're just born with it from who knows how many generations prior that somebody got infected and carried it through. So what I discovered is that the emotion of something that they were injured emotionally and physically, possibly in their past, it triggered a virus, for example, that's in the brain and in the heart, and it's causing them headaches and high blood pressure. And then when we find that emotion was connected to that virus, and we get the virus out of the brain and out of the heart, and then the blood pressure problem, high blood pressure goes away and the migraines go away. And that goes with any pain in the body. So it's all about disinfecting and detoxifying the body. It's all about finding if through certain functions of just sitting to standing causes a problem, or lights in the eyes cause a problem. Light sensitivity, sound sensitivity, smell sensitivity, touch sensitivity, standing, different physical movements I figured out can actually be stressing a person. They don't even realize it. They're not complaining that those, or they don't even recognize that certain physical positions that they put their body in are hurting them. We're able to figure all that out. So there's a whole physical analysis, an emotional analysis, the dental analysis, and the food analysis, and that fragrance analysis that I said. And we're able to find these different infections and chemicals that are deeply embedded in tissues that will never be discovered in a laboratory. It doesn't matter what lab they run, or biopsy, or even a spinal tap. They're not finding what the lab can't look for. Yeah. Yes, we're able to find that we can get the body out of stress when we match up the infection to the organ, basically getting back to that reflex analysis. We're able to find it, and shut these diseases down so fast. It's just, it's pretty awesome. That was a long one. Sorry. So
Wow, no. I mean, it
maybe we
is
want to get more of it there.
right. And I'll definitely link up the website and all the resources and information that you know, just gave out. I'll have that all in the show notes. But I mean, we're complex, you know, in general. It's a complex system that we have. So, and you know, as complex as it is, though, we're also a system. So it's interesting that you talk about the dental going into, you know, other organs, because that's exactly what I've heard, and I'm kind of personally taking precautions on my end to avoid, just because you know, like you said, the dental, I don't have all of the cavities or anything like that, but it's just like, you know, what can happen when you do go to the dentist office can affect also like your heart, your organs, everything else that spills in. It's just so interesting though that when you test for, you know, all of the viruses, that they zap. So is it just like one treatment or one time, and it zaps all the viruses all together, or how does that physically work?
What do you mean by one treatment? What do you mean when you say that?
Like,
Like it's just one dose and that's it, and then
yeah,
all through the body?
yes,
Each individual, very good question. I'm glad you asked that. Well, let's say this. We have a microbiome. We're made of germs. We have a virome. We're made with viruses. Um, there could be a child who is an exceptional athlete and exceptional in school, but and coordinated and has seemingly no disease, but that child is going to grow and grow and grow to eventually there's going to be some kind of issue that happens with that person's body. And the child was born to a mother, a loving, wonderful mother, who probably maybe only had one man in her life, and he only had one woman in his life, and everything was perfect, and everything is clean and organic food and all wonderful life. Okay, wonderful family, wonderful loving family. But still, the parents had picked up different germs and different through mosquito bites, through a dental procedure, through a food poisoning thing that happened, through it just they came from their parents that had different germs, and it's handed down from generation to generation is the point. So even though the child was very exceptional as an athlete and exceptional in school, still he or she had picked up had been born with certain toxins, like the body burden analysis was proven by the EWG, and now they had vaccines that they were given, and they had other things that have come along the journey. So the body is never clean. Just to say, I just want to start out that way. The body's never clean. You know what? I went off track because I forgot exactly your question was.
it was just if it one, I guess, dose treats all of the viruses at the same time.
Good, thank you. So the body's already got the burden in it. Mosquito bites. There's other ways that things get in the body. So let's just say that somebody is 20 years old and they unfortunately picked up COVID. Let's just go with that, okay? And now they're just like run down, and their head is hurting them, and their stomach's hurting them, and they've got diarrhea all the time, and they can barely get out of bed and can't even think or concentrate anymore. It is possible that with that acute onset of symptoms, even if it's 1 year that they're dealing with it, but they're not like, I'm going to mention something else in just a moment. It is possible that just one dose, one time, one remedy will knock out that virus, and then all of a sudden they have their life back. I've seen that. Within a day or two after the treatment, it's done, and they're back to normal. Okay, it doesn't mean that they're clean of every other germ and toxin. It just means that they're back to where they were prior to this acute onset of the symptom, and that's whether it's now year two of that symptom. Okay, so now with that said, most of the people who I see who have whether it's MS, or they have an overactive bladder, or they have bladder incontinence, or they have asthma, or they have a rash, or they have lupus, or they have Hashimoto's thyroid disease, or they have diabetes, or they have high blood pressure. It's usually, when I say usually, it's always caused by multiple different infections that are in multiple different parts of the body and multiple different toxins that are in multiple different parts of the body. So each individual toxin, each individual organ, each individual toxin and infection in that organ has to be released, has to be dealt with. So on average, one exam, me with a day with the patient, it could take a new patient workup. We're hands-on with this person for probably about 6-7 hours. It's a whole day with one person. We're very focused on that. And so then we develop a protocol that we ship to them that they do at home. And they have a schedule that they follow for maybe 3-4 months to help the body get rid of those multiple different infections and chemicals that we found through our stress analysis. So they get rid of those things, and they always do. This always works. Okay. But it doesn't mean that they're going to be symptom-free after that one protocol. Because what we don't know when we first meet the person is, it's like if you were in a rowboat and you're rowing and there's water coming into the boat. And you just realize, if I keep rowing, I'm not going to get wrong. I'm going to sink. So let me stop and let me find how the water's coming in. And when you start to look around in the bottom of the rowboat, you found a hole. And then you found the second one, the third one, you found the fourth one, you found the 10th one, you found the 20th one. I found 20. I can't find any more than, well, I better start patching these up. These are different infections and chemicals in different parts of the body, in other words, in this analogy. Yeah. So if you patched up 19 holes, but you still have one hole left, depending on the size of the hole, the water is going to continue to come in. Eventually, maybe you slow down the water coming in, you slow down the period of time it's going to take for you to sink, but you got to be able to patch up the final hole so you don't sink. So people, when they're going through this treatment, and we're finding, I'm going to tell you, with me, my integrity is I want them better in one visit. I don't want it to take 2. I don't want it to take 3. I want it done in 1. They want it. I want it. Mm-hmm. So it's not about how many times can they come in so that I can charge them. If they're done in 1 and I could be their champion in 1, they could tell the world, I'd rather have that out there than how long it's going to take. So in any event, our goal is 1. But I don't know how many holes are in the bottom of the boat or how strong the person truly is to start patching up those holes. In other words, start ridding the infections and chemicals, you understand? So yeah. It's common that people have picked up many things. They've picked up many germs. They picked up many through mosquitoes, through drinking water, through food, through vaccines, through intimate relations with other people, through being in restaurants or movie theaters where people have coughed and spread disease, through just air of different, germs coming through the air. It's so many ways that we can pick up these different chemicals and infections that make us diseased. So with that said, it's on average, it's not all going to just be rid in one visit for these chronic ailments. On average, people start improving pretty rapidly, but for their 100% restoration of their optimal health, which is what we're after, it can take time, because how many different chemicals are in the kidneys now? How many different infections got in the kidneys? How much in the lymphatic system? How much in a diseased organ? How much in the brain? How much in the bone marrow? Right. So it's just, which we can find any of this in any part of the body. It's just, there are some people in one protocol, 100% better. And some people, it's just a progress. We just got to keep patching up those holes until they're finally out of that disease. So on average, and if I see a person one time, again, I said it before, I'm happier. But they may follow a protocol for 3-4 months at home to get rid of these infections and chemicals from different parts of the body that we found these disease-causing infections and chemicals in. But there's some people that can take 2 rounds, 3 rounds, 4 rounds or so to finally see their symptoms gone. We had a woman with congestive heart failure. Patient came in 14 years with a congestive heart failure. They did surgery on the heart to try to stop it or improve heart function. She did an expensive stem cell treatment out of the US, didn't fix it. And after her second protocol, it took about maybe 5 or 6 months, her second protocol, they can't find congestive heart failure anymore with her. Normal blood flow to brain, no more AFib with the heart. We had a patient come over. This woman found me in Ireland. We see people from many parts of the world, but she came from Ireland for her coughing problem, persistent, chronic, day and night coughing. They couldn't figure out what to do for her over there in Ireland. I'm not saying Ireland's bad people or not smart people. I'm just saying they're doctors. It happens here in the US, so it's anywhere. But they couldn't figure it out. And she found me. She came across. She was so happy. She told everybody around in her town there in Ireland. So this mother, they're close friends, mother brings her 19-year-old daughter to my clinic. The daughter, rash, all over the body, rash for her whole life, ever since the day she was born. Poor mother, my God, she was always with this daughter, struggling with daughters, 19, pretty girl, nice girl, a lot of friends. Rash, doesn't want to wear certain clothes because she's covered in this, right? So on her face, body. Asthma, ever since she's a little girl. Constipation, ever since she's a little girl. Brain fog, ever since she's a little girl. There were other symptoms. In one protocol is all it took. Asthma of a lifetime, gone. Rash of a lifetime, gone. Brain fog, gone. Constipation, gone in one treatment. One treatment that she did at home. There's others that it can take several treatments for their condition, but we do see some incredibly rapid health restoration system. We see some incredibly rapid turnaround of disease back to health. It's pretty awesome.
Amazing. And yes, it does make sense. It's.
We give people a protocol we give people a protocol that they follow, so they have a calendar. They're going to take step 1 on day 1, step 2 on day 2, number 3 on day 3, like that. So it's outlined for them what they follow.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense for it not all the time being the first, dose or the first time, but because we're all individual, and like you said, it is just getting into the weeds of everything and just making sure that it's 100% or 110%. And so you mentioned all over the world, right? So give me a little bit of an idea of if one of my audience is interested in a consultation or what this would look like, how should they go about it? Like, how should they go about it?
Okay, so on my website, there is a page. Well, first of all, on every single page on my website, and there's a lot of pages. That's a design. It's a very big website.
Yeah, I know.
It's a big website.
It's a lot of information. It's great information, though.
I'll tell you though, and thank you for saying that. And we're, saying it, nice, but there's just so much information to give. I couldn't put into 1 page or 2 pages. It was just too much information. It's like, how do I get all of this information across after years of study and years of work? So, but that's it. Every page has a book appointment link on it that they can click on, and it takes them to the book appointment page. So that's number 1. And it's outlined there on their investment and how to set the appointment. If they want to call, the phone number's there. If they want to email the clinic, so they can either do it right there where there's a calendar they can click on and pay for the service right there with the calendar. They can set their appointment, or they can call or email the clinic. So it says it on every book appointment whenever they click the book appointment. On any page, but also at the top on the right side, at the top of the screen on the website, on the homepage, there's an FAQ page, frequently asked questions. So when they click on that page, all the questions that we get asked, that we have gotten asked all the time, I've got links to each question. They click on it, it opens up, and they can ask. Or they can get the answer. So what airport do I fly into? What hotels are around you that we can stay in? What's the different price of the different hotels? How far are they from the clinic? It's all outlined there. How long does it take to create my protocol? What paperwork do I need to have, bring in? It's all outlined for them. And my assistant, if they don't want to just read through that on their own time, they can call or email my clinic, and my assistant will be happy to go over it with them. So that's it. It's all on the website, or they can call or email. And people, I do need anything about their history for their disease, for their symptoms that they're coming to me for. I'm going to look at their medical records. I'm going to look at their imaging studies. I'm going to look at their blood tests. I'm going to look at whatever tests were done, surgery records, anything. I need to know what was done or what hasn't been done. Also, their dental records. I need to see things. So vaccine records. So I'll go over with them in the first evaluation discussion. They're going to have paperwork that we send them to fill out. So there's some people forget about certain symptoms because they've got some top symptoms that they're focused on, but they may have 10, or like that woman 52. I mean,
that's a lot.
Questionnaire that they can fill out. And basically, so I'm getting all their history. I want to study it before I even get to consult with them. I need to know all of that before I'm going to sit and have a discussion with them. And then we're going to have a 1 hour, maybe a little bit longer, 1 hour discussion. I'm going to ask them some key questions that are going to help me figure out, or help me start to realize potentially what's triggering their symptoms or their disease. And that way it helps me transition into the exam. So I have a lot of this information about them that when I transfer into the exam, transition into the exam appointment, that I can start to look for those different infections and chemicals. Excuse me for that. And so that's basically it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, I like actually that your website has all that information because it's basically there is a lot of information, there's a lot of questions that we have, and you cover it instead of we don't know what we don't know. So if we come to see you and there's a question that we should be asking or that information that we should know, you arm everybody with all of that knowledge, with just an understanding of these are the questions, these are, what you should know about what we do or what should happen. So having that website being as comprehensive as it is, which is great, it just arms us even more. It's just more knowledge that we should know about what you do. So amazing. And thank you, Dr.
Hear you say that.
Yeah, no, exactly. Keep it, please. Don't remove it. Thank you so much, Dr. Herman, for being on here. You gave a lot of information, but a lot of great information, a lot of things that I did not even know was just not only possible, but what is occurring in each and every one of us. And so just for you being on here, spreading the knowledge and what you do and how you can help is just, I'm grateful for that. So thank you for being here.
I thank you so much for letting me share this, and appreciate you putting me in front of your followers, and you've been a gracious hostess.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Awesome. Is there anything that I haven't asked that you would like to cover at this point?
No, I just will say that people, if you're gonna, I don't know if you have show notes or something to put them. Yeah. So there's, the YouTube channel that we have, just incredible, just incredible, life-changing, life-saving work that we're doing, testimonials on there, discussions of what I find. But hopefully it's not too overwhelming for everybody who's listening in. And I really appreciate it. And I think you've covered it pretty well. So thank you.
Perfect. Well, with that being said, we are going to end this episode. And again, thank you so much for being here. And to my audience, till next time.